Chapter 1. The ribbon hits the ash pit before I finish blinking. 1 second it is sitting in Blaine Rusk's palm, cream-colored and fraying at the edges, still carrying the faint cedar smell of the bonding trial we never completed. The next second it is curling black at the edges, dissolving into smoke, and 34 members of the Silverpine Pack are watching it burn without making a single sound. That silence is the thing I will never forget. Not the fire. Not Blaine's voice. The silence. My name is Knox. I am 23 years old. I have lived inside this pack since I was 4 days old, carried through the eastern gates in a wool blanket during a February storm. I have cooked for pack elders, sat with injured trainees through 3 winters, and ground chamomile into paste for the fever ward with my own hands. I have given everything this pack ever asked of me. Today they are asking me to leave. Elder Graves reads the exile sentence from a laminated sheet like he is announcing a parking violation. His voice does not shake. His hands do not shake. He lists my failures the way a doctor lists symptoms. Scent faint. Physically compromised post-fever. No successful bonding record. No viable reproductive assessment. A drain on pack provisions during the low stock quarter. Each word lands flat and precise. Blaine stands 2 feet to Elder Graves' left. He is wearing the dark green border chief coat, the one with the brass buttons he polished last Sunday. His blonde hair is combed back. His pale blue eyes stay level and calm, never quite touching my face. He has the expression of someone who has already moved on from a conversation they found mildly inconvenient. 7 months ago, he brought me chamomile tea during my second bonding trial. He sat across the table and said, "Wilder, I will always make sure there is a place for you here." He said it like it cost him nothing, which I now understand means it did. He places the ribbon in the fire himself. That detail was not in the official Exile script. He added it. A useless Omega, he says quietly, should not expect loyalty. I wait for someone to speak. I wait for Dr. Hensley, the pack healer who watched me survive on half portions through January, to say something. He is standing at the back wall near the water table. He is looking at his shoes. The young trainees from the East Corridor, the ones I fed warm broth after winter patrols, are looking at the floor, the ceiling, the window, anywhere that is not my face. The silence is a choice every single person in this room is making at the same time. Elder Graves slides a stamped paper across the table. 1 blanket, 1 cracked lantern, 1 tin cup. The Exile designation reads, "Voluntary removal pending seasonal review." The seasonal review clause is technically correct and practically worthless. No pack has ever reversed an Omega Exile in the middle of a resource drought. I pick up the paper. My hand does not shake. I refuse to let it shake. I turn toward the door, and that is when I see Dr. Hensley moving through the crowd with his head still down, hands in his coat pockets. He brushes past my left shoulder, and something small and cold drops into my palm. A brown glass bottle, no larger than my thumb, sealed with dark wax. He does not look at me. His face is pale and rigid, like a man walking through something he cannot afford to name out loud. I close my fingers around the bottle and keep walking. Outside, the February air cuts through my coat instantly. I stand on the meeting hall steps for exactly 3 seconds because that is how long it takes my brain to accept that this is real, that I am outside, that no one is going to open the door behind me. The door stays closed. I start walking north. The road holds for about 2 miles, then breaks apart into gravel, then mud, then pine needle ground that swallows my boots with every step. The lantern does not light properly. The cracked glass lets the wind in and the flame sputters in yellow stutters that make the shadows between the trees shift and lean. I walk until my knees ache and my fingers stop feeling the lantern handle properly. The cabin appears at the edge of the old service road like something the forest forgot to finish demolishing. 1 window is boarded from the inside. The roof sags on the left side where a pine branch punched through at some point and no one repaired it. The door swings open on 1 hinge and the whole structure smells like rust, wet wood, and something older underneath both. I stand in the doorway for a long moment. This is not shelter. This is where things are placed when no one wants to look at them anymore. I walk inside. The stove is rusted but functional. There is a rusted pipe running to the wall. I find a half-quart of dry wood stacked beside the back door, left by whoever used this cabin last and never returned for. I build a small fire, set the tin cup near the grate to catch the warmth, and sit on the floor with my back against the stone hearth. I do not cry. I think about crying. I decide against it because my body does not have the hydration to spare. I pull the brown glass bottle from my coat pocket and hold it up toward the flame. The liquid inside is pale yellow, slightly cloudy. No label, no dosage mark. Just the dark wax seal and a single scratch on the glass near the bottom that could be a letter or could be nothing. I set it on the floor beside me. That is when I hear it. Coming from the tree line, maybe 60 yards out. Not wind. Not a branch dropping. Something smaller. Something alive. A sound so thin it barely exists. It is crying. Chapter 2. I stay on the floor for 4 minutes listening to that sound and telling myself it is not my problem. The fire crackles. The wind drags itself across the broken window sill and makes a low, grieving note that fills the cabin. I pull the blanket tighter and press my back harder against the hearthstone and think about the fact that I have one blanket, 17 dried beans, a cracked lantern, and a glass bottle of something I do not understand. I do not have room in my survival calculation for whatever is crying in the dark. The sound stops for almost 3 minutes. I exhale. I tell myself it moved on, whatever it was, that it found somewhere warmer or that the cold finished it quickly, and either way it is not something I can carry right now. Then it starts again. Smaller this time. More broken. I am on my feet before I make the decision to stand. The lantern sputters twice before the flame catches properly. I push through the cabin door and the February air goes straight through my coat like the fabric is not there. My boots break through the thin ice crust on the ground with every step, a sound like snapping knuckles, rhythmic and too loud in all that quiet. I follow the sound northeast, toward the old deer fence line that the ranger maps marked as boundary to. I know it is there because I memorized every terrain detail of this area during winter patrol training, back when I still had a patrol assignment, back when I still had a pack. The fence collapsed years ago according to the maps. I never thought I would have a reason to go near it. I see the pup from 8 feet away and I stop walking completely. It is black. Not dark brown, not charcoal. Absolute black, the kind that does not reflect the lantern light correctly, that seems to absorb it instead. The fur is soaked through and matted flat against a body that is far too thin, ribs visible even under the wet coat. The pup is curled against the broken fence post with one silver-white front paw caught under a length of wire that has been pushed into the frozen ground by the weight of the collapsed wood. I hold the lantern lower and look at that wire. It is not broken. The ends are clean-cut. Someone put tension on this wire deliberately, pressed it down and under, the way you would if you were securing something in place rather than repairing a fence. The cut ends are not rusted. They are recent. The pup does not move when the lantern light touches it. Its eyes are closed. Its breathing is so thin that for one moment I am certain I am already too late, and something in my chest pulls hard at that thought, harder than I expect. Then I register the scent. Cedar smoke first, then something cooler underneath like rain hitting hot stone, and then beneath both of those a sharp metallic note that makes the back of my throat tighten. I know enough Omegaverse biology to understand what that metallic note means. I stood in enough pack medical training sessions, even if only to take notes and never to be assessed myself. Alpha blood. Royal strain. My lantern hand goes still. This pup does not belong to some wandering lone wolf couple who lost track of their litter in the dark. This pup carries royal alpha lineage in its blood, and someone cut the wire of this fence and left it here deliberately, in the middle of winter, 60 yards from a cabin that has been sitting empty for years. 60 yards from the cabin they just sent me to. I stand there with the lantern swinging gently and the cold eating through my coat sleeves, and I run the math in my head the way a practical person should. Feeding an alpha pup through a northern winter will consume provisions I do not have. If this pup belongs to a powerful bloodline, finding it in my possession makes me a thief at minimum and a kidnapper at maximum. If it belongs to no one, it will still eat twice what I can produce from this forest in February. The pup opens one eye. Gold. Not amber. Not yellow. Gold. The way a flame looks when the fuel is clean and the air is perfect, gold that fills the whole iris without leaving room for anything else. That eye stays open for 3 seconds, finding my face in the dark. I hear myself say, quietly and with no dramatic weight at all, I know what it feels like when nobody comes. I set the lantern on the frozen ground, pull off my outer coat, and wrap it around the pup before I work the wire free from its silver-white paw. The pup makes no sound while I do it. It breathes in short pulls against my neck when I lift it and tuck it against my chest. It weighs almost nothing, which is its own kind of terrible information. I carry it back to the cabin with one arm and hold the sputtering lantern in the other hand. I kick the door shut behind me. Near the fence post, half buried under the collapsed wood where the pup had been lying, something dark catches the lantern light before the door closes. I almost miss it in the dark. A strip of black leather, 2 inches wide, broken at the buckle end. Stamped into the leather in silver thread is a shape I almost do not recognize because I have only seen it in pack history documents. A crown. Small, angular, unmistakable. I pull the door shut and face the fire. Inside my coat, against my chest, the pup makes one small sound. Not pain, not fear. Something slower and more exhausted than both of those. The sound of something that has been surviving alone long enough to forget what warmth feels like. I hold it tighter. The gold eyes open again in the firelight, and this time they do not just find my face. They glow. Chapter 3. I name him Cole on the 3rd morning because his fur swallows the firelight whole. Not reflects it, not catches it. Swallows it the way deep water takes a stone, completely and without argument. I am sitting cross-legged on the floor with the tin cup of warm broth balanced on my knee and Cole pressed against my left thigh, and I watch the fire throw orange across every surface in the cabin except him, and the name arrives without effort. Cole. That is what he is. A piece of dark that refuses to be lit up. He is too weak to stand on the first day. I feed him with a strip of cloth dipped in broth, holding it near his mouth until he figures out the mechanics of taking liquid from something that is not a mother or a stream. Takes 40 minutes the first time. By the second feeding, he understands the cloth. By the third, he is pushing his nose toward my hand before I finish dipping. I give him the meat from everything I catch. There is not much. 2 small fish from the creek that runs under the ice shelf 60 yards east. 1 egg from a nest tucked under the broken roof overhang, which means some bird is foolish or desperate enough to winter here same as me. The egg goes into Cole's bowl. I drink the fish broth and tell myself it is enough, which is a lie I am getting practiced at. What I do not expect is the conversation. I start talking to him on the 2nd day because the silence in this cabin has a texture to it that I cannot describe except to say it presses. I tell him about the meeting hall while I patch the window with cloth strips cut from the hem of my extra shirt. I tell him about Dr. Hensley's bottle, which I still have not opened, while I stack wood near the stove. I tell him about Blaine's brass buttons and the way the Exile paper felt in my hand, smooth and slightly warm from sitting on the table, like it had been prepared well in advance and kept close. Cole listens. That is the only word for it. He does not sleep through my voice the way animals do. He tracks it. His oversized ears rotate toward me when I speak. When I stop, he makes a small sound in the back of his throat that in a human would read as keep going. By the 4th day he is heavier. Not a little heavier. Noticeably heavier, in the way that makes me recalculate my mental picture of his size each morning. His paws are already too large for his body, the way a young dog's paws predict the animal they will become. He brings me sticks for the fire. Not one stick, not a branch he tripped over. He goes to the woodpile, selects a piece, carries it across the cabin floor, and drops it near the grate with the careful precision of something that has thought about the process. I watch him do it the first time and I do not move for a full minute. On the 5th night, I cough blood into the cloth I keep folded in my coat pocket. Not a lot. Enough. I have been coughing since the fever in January and the cold here does not help. I fold the cloth quickly and turn my face away from Cole. He is at my side before I finish turning. He presses the flat of his head against the center of my chest, directly over the place where the cough originates, and holds it there. His skull is warm and slightly too heavy for a pup his age, and the pressure of it against my sternum is specific enough to be deliberate. The coughing does not stop immediately, but it slows. By the time the spasm passes, I am sitting straight and Cole is still pressed against me, steady as a held breath. I sit in the quiet after and think about what kind of animal learns to do that. The honest answer is that no ordinary wolf pup learns to do that. I think about the royal leather strap I found near the deer fence. I have not touched it since the first night. It is sitting on the floor near the back door under a piece of bark I placed over it because looking at it makes my brain go to places I am not prepared to go yet. I think about the wire, clean-cut ends, deliberate placement. I think about Blaine's face in the meeting hall when he watched me pick up the Exile paper. I think about how his eyes moved to the door, not to the window, not to Elder Graves, to the door like he was checking a timeline. Cole scratches something into the frost that forms on the floorboards near the hearth every night. I watch him do it carefully with one silver-white paw, pressing the lines with the pad of his foot rather than the nail. The shape is not random. It is angular, precise, the same shape I saw on the leather strap. I stare at it until the fire shifts and melts the frost and the shape disappears. My hands are cold. My provisions are dropping faster than I calculated, even with rationing. I have 12 days of food left if I am careful and do not get sicker. Cole is growing at a rate that does not match his age or his starting weight, and every time I think I understand what he is, he does something that revises the entire picture. He stops eating on the evening of the 5th day. He simply pauses mid-bowl, raises his head, and turns to face the cabin door. His silver-white paw comes forward. His spine straightens. He is not afraid. That is the part that reaches me. His posture is not fear. It is something older and steadier than fear. Protective. He places himself between me and the door. A half-second later, I hear it. Heavy boots on frozen ground, measured and even, the walk of someone who has never had to move quietly because they have never had to worry about who hears them coming. Chapter 4. The door opens without a knock. Blaine Rusk fills the frame with his dark green coat and his polished brass buttons and his careful blonde hair, and he brings the cold in with him the way people do when they have been warm somewhere else and do not notice the temperature difference because they never have to. 2 men stand behind him on the porch. Border wolves, both in pakishued gray, both carrying the kind of stillness that means they have been told to follow instructions and not improvise. Blaine looks around the cabin the way you look around a room you already own. His eyes move across the rusted stove, the patched window, the ration marks I scratched into the wall near the food shelf to track what I have left. He finds my face and his expression does something I recognize from the meeting hall, that careful assembly of concern that sits just over the frame of contempt the way a painting covers a crack in a wall. "You survived," he says. His voice carries genuine surprise dressed up as warmth. I do not answer. I stay exactly where I am, cross-legged on the floor with the tin cup near my knee. Then his eyes drop to Cole. The shift is immediate and total, and he does not fully control it. His shoulders pull back. His chin lifts 1 degree. The assembled expression collapses for exactly 2 seconds before he rebuilds it. But I see the 2 seconds. I see them clearly because I have spent enough time watching Blaine Rusk's face to understand the difference between his reactions and his performances. He recognizes Cole. He is not shocked that there is a wolf pup in the cabin of a rejected Omega living alone in February. He is shocked that this specific pup is still alive and in this specific location. "Where did you find that?" he says. Not a question, the way you deliver the words when you already know the probable answer and you need to hear the lie to understand how much the other person knows. "I found him near the deer fence," I say. "He was trapped. I brought him in." Blaine nods slowly. One of the border wolves behind him leans forward and says something low near his ear. I catch 3 words. Silver. Paw. Royal. Blaine puts one hand back without turning and the border wolf goes quiet instantly. He crouches to Cole's level. Cole does not move toward him. He does not growl yet. He simply holds his position between me and Blaine's crouching body. Silver-white paw forward. Gold eyes tracking Blaine's face with the concentration of something that is assessing a threat rather than meeting a stranger. Blaine extends one gloved hand slowly. Cole's upper lip pulls back. The sound that comes from a pup this size should not generate the air pressure it generates. It fills the cabin. Both border wolves step back without meaning to. Blaine's extended hand goes very still, and I watch the fine muscles around his jaw tighten before he stands up and reassembles his expression into something patient and official. He tells me I am in violation of 3 exile conditions. Unauthorized occupation of protected pack-adjacent territory. Unauthorized possession of potential pack assets. Unauthorized contact with foreign wolf-class animals without disclosure to border security. He recites these 3 violations with the same vocal rhythm as Elder Graves reading the exile sentence in the meeting hall, smooth and laminated and prepared well ahead of the moment. I tell him this cabin has been abandoned for 12 years according to the ranger records and the pack never filed a territorial claim on this road. He smiles. By tomorrow, he says, those records will reflect the most recent assessment. Then he says the word kidnapping and the word warrant in the same sentence, and the word kidnapping hits the room with a specific gravity because it is a royal-level charge, the kind that bypasses pack council and goes directly to coalition law enforcement. I understand what he is doing. He is not building a case. He is building a story that will be easier to believe than mine because it has official paper behind it, and I am a scent-faint rejected Omega living in an abandoned cabin who cannot prove anything. By tomorrow night, he tells me, you will wish the cold had taken you first. He says it quietly. That is the most important part. He does not say it to the border wolves. He says it to me, low and level, the way you deliver something you intend to honor. He turns toward the door. Cole moves. It happens in under a second. Cole crosses the floor in 4 steps and clamps his jaws around the glove on Blaine's right hand. Blaine spins and tries to pull back, and Cole twists once, sharp and deliberate, and releases. Blaine yanks his hand back, checks his glove, and for one exposed moment his face is pure cold calculation rather than politics. He leaves. The border wolves close the door behind them. I sit in the silence they leave behind and breathe through it. Then I look at Cole. He is sitting near the stove with something in his mouth. He drops it on the floor in front of me with the careful presentation of an offering. It is a small square of inner glove lining, the part that sits against the skin. Sewn into the lining in silver thread, hidden from the outside, is a pattern I have to hold the lantern close to identify. The same crown shape as the leather strap under the bark near the back door. I pick it up with 2 fingers. Fresh blood marks the floor near Cole's silver-white paw. I reach for him immediately, checking for injury, searching the paw pad and between the toes. He holds still and lets me look. The blood is not his. It carries the same pale yellow chemical note as the liquid inside Dr. Hensley's bottle. Chapter 5. I open the bottle that night. I have been carrying it in my coat pocket for 6 days, pressing my thumb against the wax seal every time my hand lands in that pocket, the way a tongue finds a sore tooth. Dr. Hensley pressed it into my palm in a crowded meeting hall while looking at his shoes, which means he could not afford to be seen giving it to me, which means whatever is inside it cost him something to hand over. I break the wax with my thumbnail and tip the bottle toward the lantern. Pale yellow, slightly cloudy. The smell is faint and mineral, like water from a deep stone well, with something chemical underneath that I cannot name but that my body reacts to immediately. A tightening across the back of my neck and a faint metallic bloom at the back of my throat. Cole, sitting 3 feet away, goes rigid. Not afraid. Alert. His gold eyes fix on the bottle with the same expression he had when Blaine walked through the door. That assessment posture. That calculating stillness. I have been taking this every 2 days, small doses, following some instinct that Dr. Hensley included it because I need it. I look at Cole's reaction and I put the bottle on the floor between us and I wait. Cole does not approach it. He keeps his eyes on it and makes a sound in his chest that is less than a growl and more than breathing, sustained and deliberate. I do not take the dose. I fall asleep near the stove with Cole pressed against my side, and I wake 4 hours later to something different. The first thing I notice is the warmth. Not body warmth from Cole. Something from inside my own chest, spreading outward like the first honest heat of a fire catching on dry wood. I breathe in and the air in the cabin smells the way it always does. Pine resin and iron rust and old smoke. But underneath those I find something I have not detected in months. My own scent. Chamomile first, faint but present. Rainwater after that. And beneath both of those something else, something warmer and older that I do not have a name for, something that makes the air in my lungs feel heavier in a way that is not uncomfortable. Cole makes a sound. Not his alert sound. Not his distress sound. Something I have never heard from him before, low and sustained and releasing. The sound of a held thing finally setting down its weight. He crosses the cabin floor and presses himself against my chest so hard I have to brace against the hearthstone. I sit there with my arms around him and my scent coming back into the room around us, and I try to understand what I am looking at. I pull up the loose floorboard near the north wall. I found the gap on day 2 when my boot heel caught the edge. I have been using the hollow beneath it to store the leather strap and the silver thread glove lining. But I go deeper this time, pressing my arm into the cold dark under the board, and my fingers find paper. Old paper, bound with a cord that disintegrates when I touch it, falling in dark threads between my fingers. I pull the stack out into the lantern light and lay it on the floor, and Cole sits beside me and reads it with me, or does something that resembles reading, his eyes moving across the pages when mine do. Ranger Station Recovery Records. Dated across a 12-year operational window, the last entry made 3 weeks before the station was officially decommissioned. The records are categorized by case type. Standard section first, then territorial dispute housing, then at the back, behind a separator page marked with a small printed crown, Anchor Omega Recovery and Stabilization Protocols. I read slowly. The records describe a classification of omega whose natural scent chemistry carries a compound that does not exist in standard omega biology. The compound is described as a stabilizing agent for young alpha heirs born with volatile bloodline pressure, royal strain pups whose early shifts carry a biological risk of going permanent, a state the records call bloodlock, where the wolf form becomes the only accessible form. The records describe how anchor omegas were documented, assigned, and in some cases concealed from general pack records to prevent targeted acquisition by rival coalitions. The records use the word rainborn. My skin goes cold in a way that has nothing to do with the February air. I read the word again. Rainborn. My scent is chamomile and rainwater. I have always been told it is faint because I am weak, because the fever damaged me, because I am the kind of omega that packs keep around out of tolerance rather than necessity. I have believed that for 23 years. I look at Cole. Cole looks at me. The boots crunch outside before I hear voices. One set of footsteps, lighter than Blaine's border wolves, stopping and starting, moving like someone trying to be quiet without enough practice at it. A knock. Actual knocking. 3 careful hits against the wood. I open the door to one of Blaine's border wolves. The one who went quiet in the cabin when the other leaned toward Blaine's ear. He is not in his pack-issued gray. He is in plain clothes, and he is shaking in a way that is not entirely from cold. His name is Truett Hale, and he starts speaking before I get the door fully open. Run, he says. Before morning. The warrant is already filed. Blaine told them you are dangerous and unstable and that the pup was taken from a trafficking recovery transfer. He says you intercepted the handler and disappeared with the asset. I say nothing. My hands are still holding the old Ranger records. Truett says, there were traffickers on Silver Pine land 26 days ago. Blaine ordered the patrol logs from that week erased. I watched him do it. The pup was moved through our eastern checkpoint in a sealed transport, and Blaine signed the clearance himself and then panicked when the coalition mobilized because he knew the search would reach the service road. He says the pup was never supposed to survive long enough to be found. Something hits the cabin wall 6 inches from Truett's head. Not a branch. Not ice. An arrow. Carbon shaft. Silver-fletched. And it is still vibrating in the wood when we both look at it. Someone followed Truett here. And from the forest, from 3 separate directions at once, for voices rise together into the black February sky in a sound that is less howl and more command. A sound that rattles the glass in the cabin window and makes the lantern flame go absolutely flat. Cole is not afraid. Cole is answering them. Chapter 6. Cole's answer is not a pup sound. It comes from somewhere below his throat, below his chest, from a place in his body that should not exist yet in an animal this young and this small. It rolls out of him in a frequency that I feel in my back teeth and the base of my sternum, and the 4 voices in the forest receive it and go immediately, completely silent. That silence is worse than the howling. Truett Hale is pressed against the interior cabin wall with the arrow still vibrating in the wood 6 inches from where his head was. His mouth is open. His hands are flat against the wall behind him like he is trying to push through it. I grab his collar and pull him fully inside and slam the door with my shoulder and slide the iron bolt across, the one I found under the floorboard 2 days ago and installed because I knew Blaine would come back. The bolt is thin. It will not hold long against anything serious. I push the food shelf against the door with both hands and Cole moves to help me, pressing his body weight against the lower edge of the shelf with focused, deliberate pressure. Truett watches Cole do this and makes a sound in his throat that is not quite a word. I tell Truett to barricade the back window. He moves. Good. Fear makes some people freeze and some people useful, and Truett Hale, to his credit, is the second kind. I go to the stove and bank the fire low, reducing the light visible through the window gaps. Then I move to the wall and press my back flat and breathe. The forest outside is still. Not quiet. Still. There is a difference. Quiet is the absence of sound. Still is when everything that was moving chooses to stop at the same time, when the wind drops and the branches hold and every animal in the tree line decides not to breathe. That is what surrounds the cabin now. A chosen stillness, organized and total. Truett slides down the back wall to sitting. His face in the low firelight is the color of old paper, and his hands are shaking hard enough that I can hear his rings clicking against each other. He is wearing a silver pine border ring on his right hand, brass, pack-stamped, the same one all border wolves wear. He looks at it like he wants to take it off but does not let himself. He says, "There is something I did not finish telling you." I look at him. He says, "The medicine Dr. Hensley gave you. It was not something Dr. Hensley made. It was something he found in the border supply inventory 3 weeks before your exile, logged under a requisition number that traces back to a private medical contractor the Pack Council has never officially authorized. He did not know what it was when he took it. He only knew Blaine had ordered it assigned to your pre-exile health assessment without going through standard Omega medical protocol." I look at the brown glass bottle sitting on the floor near the hearth. Truett says, "Blaine knew what you were before you did." He says it and then stops like he understands how much weight those 7 words carry and wants to give me space to absorb them. I do not have space. I store them in the part of my brain that is currently running survival calculations, and I keep my eyes on the door. I was not exiled because I was weak. I was exiled because Blaine needed me isolated, sense-suppressed, and positioned near a specific location before a specific event. Every detail of my removal from the pack, the timing, the route, this cabin, was arranged around a plan that was already in motion when he sat across from me with chamomile tea and told me I would always have a place. The rage that arrives is cold, not hot. That surprises me. I expected hot rage, the kind that shakes your hands and blurs your vision. What I get instead is a cold, clear, load-bearing anger that settles into my chest like a structural beam. It does not consume. It holds. Cole stops pressing against the shelf. He turns to face the door. His tail moves once, a single slow sweep, and the motion is not fear and it is not aggression. I have spent enough days reading his body to know what I am looking at. Recognition. He knows what is outside this cabin. I look at him and he looks at the door, and his gold eyes are steady and warm in a way they have not been since the night I found him. Since before whatever happened to him started. Since whatever version of his life existed before a sealed transport and a cut wire fence and 60 yards of frozen ground between him and an exile cabin. The 4 shapes materialize out of the fog without sound. I see them through the gap in the boarded window, for masses of black moving in formation through the tree line, each one larger than anything I have seen on 4 legs, each one moving with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers rather than hunting animals. They do not circle the cabin. They position around it in a deliberate geometry, one at each compass point, and then they stop. They are not attacking. They are sealing the perimeter. Truett makes a sound behind me that is very close to a prayer. Cole sits perfectly still facing the door, and I realize he has been waiting for this. Not afraid of it. Not surprised by it. He has been waiting since the night I found him, maybe before that, with the patience of something that understood it would be found eventually and simply needed to survive until the moment arrived. A voice comes from directly outside the door. It is not raised. It does not need to be. It passes through the wood and the iron bolt and the furniture I shoved against it and lands in the center of the room with total authority. Open it, Omega. My son is inside. Chapter 7. I do not open the door immediately. 3 seconds pass. 4. 5. I stand with both hands flat against the food shelf. I pushed across the door and I breathe and I look at Cole and Cole looks back at me with those gold eyes steady and patient and I make myself think clearly, which is the hardest thing I have ever done in a life that has required a considerable amount of hard thinking. This is Ridge Calloway, Alpha King of the Northern Coalition. Truitt said his name low and fast, like saying it at normal volume might cause structural damage, and from the weight of that single sentence through the door I understand why. The Northern Coalition controls 11 territories. Its military arm has never lost an enforcement action. Ridge Calloway has personally ended 2 pack rebellions and 1 territorial war, all 3 in under 8 weeks each. He is standing 6 inches from my door in a February storm waiting for me to open it. I slide the bolt. The door opens and the cold comes in like a held breath releasing, and Ridge Calloway fills the frame the way weather fills a window, completely and without apology. He is tall in a way that reorganizes the dimensions of the room. Black coat, heavy and military cut. No decorative details except the silver wolf ring on his right hand. Black hair swept back from a face that has a scar running clean through the left eyebrow, pale and old. A healed blade cut rather than a claw mark. Storm gray eyes that move across the room in under 2 seconds and absorb every detail without expression. Behind him, the 4 black wolves hold their positions in the dark. Truitt drops to both knees on the cabin floor without being asked. The instinct is that fast, that total. Ridge looks at me. I do not drop to my knees. I do not know exactly why I make that choice, except that I have spent the last 6 days surviving on half rations in a broken cabin because someone with authority decided my value was 0, and my knees have not recovered enough respect for authority to bend themselves voluntarily. He does not react to me staying upright. He simply looks at me for one measured moment and then his eyes move past me to Cole. Cole crosses the floor. He covers the distance in 4 steps, and when he reaches Ridge, he rises up on his hind legs and puts both front paws on Ridge's chest, and Ridge drops to one knee in the snow of the doorway in one single motion, like a building that has been holding itself up through structural determination alone and finally decides it can set down the weight. He says Cole. Just that word. Barely above a breath. And Cole turns around. He drops back to 4 paws, turns his body, and presses himself against my legs. He is facing his father. He is standing in front of me. The position is not accidental, and it is not a pup being confused about geography. Every line of Cole's body is deliberate. He is not choosing between us. He is telling Ridge something specific about what I am to him and what he will and will not allow. Ridge looks at Cole's positioning for a long moment. Then he looks at me again, and this time the look is different. Not threat assessment. Something more careful. He stands and steps inside, and the 4 wolves outside shift formation without being commanded. Closing the gap, the door leaves. He does not speak immediately. He walks the room, and I understand he is reading it the way a crime scene is read. Not dramatically, just thoroughly. He sees the ration marks on the wall. He counts them. He sees the patched window, the banked fire, the 2 bowls on the floor where I eat and Cole eats. He sees that Cole's bowl has more residue in it than mine. He sees my wrist where the coat sleeve rides up, and the circumference of my wrist tells a clear numerical story about the last 3 weeks. He sees all of it in the time it takes me to breathe twice. He looks at Cole, healthy and heavy and alert, and then back at my wrist. When he speaks, his voice has a different quality than it had through the door. Still controlled. Still low. But the authority in it has shifted aside to make room for something else. You kept him alive, he says, while no one kept you. I do not answer that. I cannot answer it without my voice doing something I am not willing to let it do in front of this man. One of the 4 wolves shifts at the doorway, human form in under a second. A tall woman in a black field coat who moves immediately to the bottle on the floor near the hearth. She picks it up, opens it, smells it, and looks at Ridge with an expression that carries information. She says, Coalition suppressant. Class 3. This concentration rate is consistent with Rainborn masking protocol. The room goes quiet in a different way than it was quiet before. Ridge turns from the woman to me slowly. He says, "How long have you been taking this?" I say, 6 days on, 1 day off. "But I stopped 2 days ago." He says, "Why did you stop?" I look at Cole. Cole is still pressed against my legs. I say he reacted to it, like it was something he already knew to be afraid of. Ridge is quiet for 4 full seconds. Then he crosses to the loose floorboard near the north wall, the one I did not show him, the one I did not even look at when he was walking the room. He crouches, lifts it, and reaches into the hollow underneath without hesitation, and pulls out the Ranger records I left there. He opens to the last section. He reads the word Rainborn and goes completely, absolutely still. Chapter 8. He stays crouched over those records for longer than feels comfortable. I watch his shoulders. I have learned in 23 years that when powerful people go still, what they do with their shoulders tells you whether the stillness is thought or anger. Ridge's shoulders are down and level. This is thought, deep, fast, and pulling in multiple directions at once. The woman in the black field coat, who I will learn is called Sarah, his head of medical intelligence, is watching him the same way I am. Her expression has the careful neutrality of someone who has seen their commanding officer surprised before and knows the correct response is to hold position and wait. Truett Hale is still on his knees near the back wall. He has not moved since Ridge entered. He understands that the only reason he is still in this room and not face down in February snow is that he got here before Ridge did, and his presence raises questions Ridge has not finished forming yet. Ridge sets the records on the floor in front of him, open to the Rainborn section, and he looks at Cole. Cole is still pressed against my legs. He has not moved since he positioned himself between me and Ridge. His silver-white paw is on my left boot, and the weight of it is warm and specific, and I find myself pressing my foot gently against it to confirm it is real. Ridge says Cole was born with volatile royal bloodline pressure. We have known since his 4th week. His early shifts were unstable, incomplete. He would begin the transition and become locked between forms, which in a pup under 6 months causes neurological damage that compounds with every episode. He says it without looking away from Cole, like he is explaining something out loud that he has already carried alone for a long time. He says, "Our medical team searched for an anchor omega for 4 months. Every Rainborn line we traced was either extinct, relocated without records, or deliberately removed from coalition territory before we could locate them. We did not know why the removals were so consistent until we started cross-referencing border transfer records from a specific 8-month window." He stops. I say, "Silver Pines Eastern Checkpoint." He looks at me. I say, "Truett told me Blaine signed the clearance for the transport, the one that moved Cole through your territory. But Blaine did not just panic when the coalition mobilized the search. He panicked because if you found Cole, you would pull the border transfer records, and pulling those records would surface the other transfers, the ones from the 8 months before." I pull the silver thread insignia from my coat pocket, the one Cole tore from Blaine's glove lining. I hold it out and Ridge takes it from my fingers, and the transfer is brief and careful, his hand not touching mine, but close enough that I register the warmth radiating from his palm in the cold cabin air. He studies it for 2 seconds and then shows it to Sarah. She says, "Private contractor seal. Same issuing body as the suppressant in the bottle." The shape of what Blaine built becomes fully visible to me in that moment, the way a picture becomes clear when you finally see the frame. Blaine was not simply corrupt. He was operating as a procurement contractor for a network that specifically targeted Rainborn Omegas, suppressed their sense using coalition-grade chemicals to prevent identification, then moved them out of territories before the coalition's medical teams could locate them. My exile was not the beginning of his plan. I was the plan's final stage. Isolated, suppressed, positioned near a disposal location where a trafficked royal pup had been dumped, making me the perfect suspect if anything surfaced. He built me into his exit strategy. Ridge is watching my face while I work through it. He does not rush me. He does not fill the silence with his own interpretation. He waits, and the waiting is not passive. It is the focused attention of someone who understands that what I am processing right now is not simple. When I finish, I look at him directly. I say, "He suppressed my scent for months before the exile. If I had kept taking the medicine, Cole would have deteriorated. The blood lock would have progressed. Because I stopped, My scent returned enough to stabilize him, and that is why he is standing here right now instead of permanently locked in wolf form. Ridge says, yes. I say, so my entire exile, Blaine's rejection, the fever recovery period, the timing of the bonding trial failures, all of it was managed around keeping my scent suppressed long enough to remove me before you found Cole. Ridge says, that is what the records indicate. I look at the floor for a moment because the full weight of it needs somewhere to land and I do not want it on my face. Then Ridge does something I do not expect. He shrugs off his coat and sets it across my shoulders. He does not grab the collar and pull it into place. He sets it the way you set something fragile down, and he steps back before I can react to the warmth of it, which is the warmth of someone else's body caught in fabric and transferred without demand. I go very still. He says, I will not turn what you carried into a debt. What you did for Cole was not strategic and it was not calculated. I read this room and I know what it cost you. I do not cry. I hold that warmly inside my chest and I do not let it break the surface because I do not have enough practice receiving careful things to know how to receive them without falling apart. Then dawn light comes through the window gap. And Blaine Rusk steps out of a black pack council vehicle with 3 officials, a camera, and a document folder, smiling at the open cabin door like he has arrived exactly on time for something he scheduled. Chapter 9. Blaine sees Ridge and his smile stays on his face for 3 full seconds after it should have died. That 3-second delay is the most honest thing Blaine Rusk has ever done in my presence. His body does not know how to process the variable that is standing in the doorway of the cabin he built his entire exit strategy around. His brain scrambles to reassemble the scenario into something he can still control, and for those 3 seconds the scrambling is visible in the slight widening of his eyes and the way his document folder shifts from his right hand to his left as if a different hand will help. Then the smile resets. Professionally. Completely. He steps forward and drops to one knee in the snow and bows his head to Ridge with the practiced fluency of a man who has spent years performing loyalty for audiences. Alpha King, he says, I received the emergency alert that the heir had been located in compromised custody. I came immediately with Pack Council officials to ensure proper legal transfer and to formally present the coalition with evidence of the Omega responsible. He holds up the document folder. Ridge does not move from the doorway. Blaine rises and opens the folder and begins presenting. His voice is measured and professional and carries the cadence of someone who prepared this presentation thoroughly. He has Wilder Knox's Exile paper. He has a sworn statement from 2 Silverpine elders describing me as psychologically unstable following the winter fever. He has a forged medical assessment describing my Omega status as non-viable and potentially volatile. He has a time-stamped report claiming I intercepted a legitimate trafficking recovery transfer on the service road and fled with the royal heir. One of the Pack Council officials is filming on a mounted camera. Blaine is building a record in real time, a public legal document, the kind that becomes very difficult to dismantle once it exists in official coalition files. For approximately 40 seconds I understand why Blaine has survived as long as he has. He is extraordinarily good at this. He speaks with the confidence of a man who believes that official paper, delivered at the right moment to the right authority, can reshape reality. Ridge says nothing. He listens. He lets Blaine finish the full presentation. Then Ridge says, Truett Hale. Step forward. Blaine's file folder lowers 2 inches. Truett walks out from behind me. He is still in plain clothes. His face is pale and set. He stops beside Ridge and turns to face the camera directly, which tells me Truett made a decision somewhere between the arrow hitting the wall and this moment, a decision that cost him something he is not going to get back. He gives testimony for 6 minutes. He describes the night the sealed transport came through the eastern checkpoint. He names the handler. He gives the timestamp from the patrol log before it was erased, which he photographed on his personal device and sent to his personal server the same night, because Truett Hale may have been silent too long, but he is not stupid. He describes Blaine signing the clearance. He describes Blaine ordering the log deletion. He describes Blaine identifying the cabin on a service road map and marking it as the disposal point when the coalition search mobilized. One of the Pack Council officials has stopped looking at the camera and started looking at Blaine. Sarah steps forward and places the brown glass bottle on the overturned crate serving as a surface near the door. She places beside it a printed analysis on coalition letterhead. the suppressant compound, this classification, the private contractor registration number. The same registration number is on the silver thread insignia from Blaine's glove lining, which Ridge sets beside the analysis. Blaine opens his mouth. Then Cole moves. He goes to the cold stove, puts his nose under the iron base, and pulls something out with one careful silver-white paw. He carries it across the cabin floor and drops it at Ridge's feet. The torn piece of Blaine's glove lining, with the crown insignia in silver thread, which Cole tore free during Blaine's visit and which I assumed was the only piece. This is the other half, the half that stayed attached to the glove. Cole had it stored under the stove since the moment Blaine left and said nothing, because Cole cannot speak, but he has been holding evidence. Ridge picks it up, fits the two halves together. The crown is complete. Blaine says the animal is feral and the chain of custody on any item it touched is compromised. Ridge says the chain of custody on a royal heir's testimony is unimpeachable under Northern Coalition law. That heir is my son. His testimony is constitutionally admissible in any form he can provide it. Blaine looks at me. He says the Omega is dangerous. He is rainborn. Rainborn blood is unstable and carrying him to Coalition territory endangers the heir further. The classification exists for a reason. The suppressant protocol was protective, not punitive. I say, the heir is standing on my foot right now because he will not move away from me. I would like to see the danger assessment that accounts for that. Blaine takes one step back and the four black wolves behind Ridge simply close the spacing without being instructed and Blaine stops moving. Cole begins to tremble. Not fear. Something internal, something biological, the kind of shaking I have seen in him twice before when his body pressed against a limit it cannot hold indefinitely. The shift is trying to happen. The pressure of the confrontation is triggering the bloodlock risk and his small body is fighting it. My scent releases before I consciously do anything. It blooms out of my chest like heat from an open door, chamomile and rain and that deeper warmer note I still do not have a name for, and it fills the cabin in under 2 seconds. Every alpha present reacts physically. Ridge's head turns. Sarah's breath audibly stops. The pack council officials step back. The four wolves outside the door make a sound in unison. Cole goes still. Completely. The trembling stops. His breathing levels. He shifts. Not fully. Halfway. Small hands instead of front paws. A small face with gold eyes, black-haired and pale, crouching on the cabin floor looking up at me. He says, in a voice like snow on stone, stay. Chapter 10. The word hangs in the cabin like smoke. Stay. One word from a child who has spent weeks in wolf form because his body could not hold the human shape safely, who I watched shake and fight against a biological limit every time the pressure built too high, who pressed himself against my chest in the dark and held himself together through 6 nights of freezing cold with only my returning scent to anchor him. He says it looking directly at me, his gold eyes steady and clear, his small hands still carrying the silver-white marking across the left palm. Nobody moves. Blaine Rusk is the first one to break the silence because men like Blaine cannot survive in silence. They need noise to build their structures in. He says, the partial shift is proof of instability and this Omega's scent triggered it. This is exactly the danger I documented. Ridge says, you are done speaking. It is 4 words. No raised voice. No movement. 4 words from a man who has had enough. And the authority in them is so total and so quiet that Blaine closes his mouth and does not open it again. Ridge crouches to Cole's level. Cole is still half-shifted, small and crouching, looking between his father's face and mine with the careful measurement of a child deciding something important. Ridge puts one hand out, open, not reaching, just available. Cole puts his small silver-white marked hand into his father's palm. Then he reaches his other hand out and closes it around 2 of my fingers. He holds both at the same time. That is his answer to whatever question the adults in the room have been trying to resolve. The pack council officials document everything. Truitt's testimony, the suppressant analysis, the matched insignia, the erased patrol logs recovered from Truitt's server. Blaine is placed under Coalition custody detention before the sun clears the tree line. He does not perform his way out of it because there is no audience left to perform for. The camera that was going to build his record instead built ours. The 2 Silverpine elders who signed my exile paper are suspended pending territorial investigation. The ration theft records, the illegal Omega removals that Truitt outlines in his secondary testimony, the erased checkpoint logs, all of it goes into a wider coalition inquiry that will take months to fully unwind. Justice does not arrive complete and immediate. It arrives as a process which is slower and less satisfying and more durable than the alternative. I pack my things while Cole sits on the floor watching me. The cracked lantern, the blanket, the old Ranger records, which Ridge tells me are coalition evidence now but which he says I can have copies of whenever I am ready to read them fully. The tin cup, the brown glass bottle, empty, which I keep because I have not decided yet what I want to do with the fact that someone suppressed my biology for months and called it a health protocol. That anger is still cold and load-bearing and I will carry it until I know where to set it down. Ridge stands near the door while I pack. He does not offer to help. He does not tell me to hurry. He is simply present in the room the way a wall is present, stable and non-demanding. I pick up the last item. The black leather strap with the silver crown, the first thing I found near the deer fence that told me Cole was something other than what he appeared. I turn it in my fingers once and then I hold it out toward Ridge. He looks at it for a moment. Then he says, "Keep it." I say, "I do not want trophies from surviving something I should never have been put through." He says, "It is not a trophy. It is documentation of what he did to you and it belongs in your hands, not mine." That answer takes me a moment to process because it is correct in a way that cuts through everything I expected this man to be when I imagined him across 3 weeks of cabin nights. I put the strap in my coat pocket. Cole shifts back to wolf form while I am buttoning my coat, the human shape too costly to maintain without continued proximity to my scent, and Ridge catches him without disruption, one smooth motion, holding him against his chest. Cole immediately cranes his neck toward me and makes the sound, the low releasing sound that means he is anchored and does not want the anchor to move. Ridge looks at me. He says, "I am offering you sanctuary at the Northern Coalition estate. Not as a ward, not as a medical resource, not as Cole's permanent assigned stabilizer. As a person who is owed safety, time, and the ability to make decisions about what comes next without a deadline." I say, "And if I say no?" He says, "Then I will have the cabin repaired, structurally sound, fully supplied, and assigned a permanent coalition protection detail before I leave this service road." I stand in the middle of the cabin floor for a long moment. I look at the ration marks on the wall. I look at the patched window, the rusted stove, the floorboard that hid records that changed everything I understood about my own body and history. I look at the place near the hearth where Cole and I sat through 6 nights and I talked and he listened and neither of us gave up. I say, "I will come. Not because I am claimed. Not because I have nowhere else. Because for the first time in 23 years, the choice is actually mine, offered clean and without a hidden cost attached to it." Ridge opens the door. Cole is asleep against his chest before we reach the vehicle. One small silver-white hand loose at his side, breathing steady and even in the cold morning air. Ridge holds him with both arms and opens the rear door and I get in first and Cole immediately slides from Ridge's arms onto my lap without waking. Ridge gets in beside me. The vehicle moves. I watch the cabin through the rear window as the service road curves and the trees close behind it and the structure disappears. It was not proof that the world had run out of places to put me. I understand that now. It was the place where I discovered that I was never what they said I was. That the scent they suppressed was not nothing. That the mouth they called a drain was the same mouth that spoke life into a dying pup every day until life answered back. Cole's hand tightens in his sleep around the edge of my coat. Ridge receives a sealed message as we cross into coalition territory. I watch the color leave his face in a single even pull, like a shade drawn down a window. His jaw sets, his eyes move to Cole, then to me, then back to the message. He says nothing, but he folds the message once and holds it in his closed fist for the rest of the drive, and the fact that he does not put it away tells me he cannot stop thinking about it. 3 miles inside the border, I say, "What does it say?" He opens it and reads it out loud. His voice is level and controlled and carries only one small crack on the final line. The Rainborn records were incomplete. Wilder Knox was not the last one hidden. He was the first one found. The trees move past the window in long dark lines. Cole breathes on my lap, steady and warm and alive. And I understand that survival was only ever the beginning of this story, and that whatever comes next will require every part of me that Blaine Rusk spent months trying to make me forget I had. If this story moved something in you, if Wilder's quiet strength, Cole's gold eyes, or Ridge's 4 words hit differently than you expected, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next. Because the Rainborn records are open now and we are only at the beginning of what they reveal. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me which moment hit hardest. Tell me what you are carrying that this story spoke to. Your words in that comment section do not just reach me. They reach every person who finds this video after a hard night and needs to know that someone else understands what it means to survive something that was supposed to erase you.